This is Waris Hussein, and you're listening to Gallifrey Public Radio. Yeah?
This is Gallifrey Public Radio, dedicated to positive enjoyment of Doctor Who. We travel through classic and new episodes, explore the extended universe, and play a few games from time to time. We do discuss news, content that has been officially released, and the occasional interesting rumor, but we'll warn you before anything considered spoilers comes up.
Welcome to episode 523 of Gallifrey Public Radio. I'm Jay.
I'm Julie.
I'm Kier.
And I'm Haley. Today, the Doctor and Ruby slide into our DMs to try and save some dedicated, if oblivious, Finetime users from what should be an obvious danger in Dot and Bubble.
I don't care what you think.
You can say whatever you want. You can think absolutely anything. I will do anything if you just allow me to save your lives.
If you'll turn away, ladies, before we're contaminated.
Like you will die out there, and I can save your lives. Now let me!
I'm just going to put this out here right now. I think this was my favorite episode of the season so far.
I think this episode made me feel the most uncomfortable of all the episodes so far, so I think that they're hitting their target.
Mm-hmm.
This one is... It started out with a, hey, this is a, yet another example of social media bad. And it seemed like that was the entire premise until the last 5 minutes when things really took a turn and became much, I don't want to say better, but it became a much better episode.
I don't think it was only a social media commentary, however. I think it's a socialism commentary.
The surface layer that you get just by glancing at it is very much the social media bad, which we've seen numerous times in multiple different shows. And you can start to dig into it, but it's not until you rewatch it that you're able to recognize all of the layers going on. They do a good job of putting them in there, but not making it something that's obvious right up front. And it's not until you get to that twist at the end, not until you get to that that switch, that you can then go back and start to pick up on all of the things that, like Lindy does some things that it's just like on second viewing, it's just kind of like, oh, that's so much worse than I thought it was first time.
Yeah. It goes from being a clear dig at some of the things at a very surface level. It's absolutely, you can read it right off the frame, to a point where you can tell that there are some undertones that are poking and prodding at something deeper throughout, because of the compounding behavior and certain turns of phrase and just general treatment, and the fact that the walls, dare say the bubble walls, are so high that there's almost no sign of redemption among these characters, that you think, oh, they can't possibly be. There must be some humanity in there somewhere. And, it becomes more and more apparent that if it does exist, it's going to take far more time than they have to wear that down. But then, as you were saying, Jay, on the rewatches, it starts to feel uncomfortable, if not extremely gross. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, Julie, as you're saying, is more than necessarily social media commentary. It gets into social commentary, and then it becomes sort of a behavioral statement, and then it becomes something far much more. I don't know if I would even call it necessarily a twist at the end so much as a reveal.
Yeah.
And that's what's even more bothersome, is because you had these hints that something was there, that these were more than just vapid rich kids that had been in an echo chamber for however long they've been off homeworld. But as the final 5, 6, 7 minutes really starts to unravel it all and put it out in front of your face at a point where you're supposed to be seeing the end game, and it just gets worse and worse. And that's a phenomenal turn of the story. I think that made for some excellent storytelling.
One of the criticisms I've heard people level at this is our main character, Lindy, and that she comes off as one-dimensional. And I'm like, I think that's by design. Like, there's the moment when she encounters Ricky September, and there's that's my first hug. I've never done that before, kind of thing. And you get that moment of, okay, maybe there is hope for her. Maybe she's going to start realizing that there's things in this world that are better than the bubble. And she's going to start looking outside, and you get that kind of hope that maybe this is the turning point for her, and she's going to start becoming a better person. And then when she cold-bloodedly sacrifices him to save her own skin, you're like, oh, there is nothing there below the surface layer. This is just exactly who she is. And it's not that she is... It wasn't a failing that she was written one-dimensionally. That was intentional from the get-go.
I think if she had been truly one-dimensional, she would have been one of the ones that stayed in their desk space when contacted by the doctor. So I do feel like there was an opening for her to consider and grow that tiny bit, like you're saying, Jay, where this would have been a very short episode if she was truly one dimension and flat, because it would have been like, look to your right. She looks and then she just stays, or she probably wouldn't have even looked. And that's what I think before we saw Dr. and Ruby contact her, they probably reached out to and spoke to a few others that were just like completely ignored or disregarded and did not even try some of the tactics. So I think you had to have that. So it allowed the cleverness of the Doctor and Ruby to play off of each other and try to get into Lindy's mind and break that barrier by just enough to get her to consider and move in any direction, literally.
It didn't occur to me until pretty late into thinking it through after second viewing and things about the homeworld, the state of the homeworld. Doctor said he couldn't get through the defense system to get to the Finetime planet of the rich kids, but the homeworld has been already devastated. What happened there?
So
Did the doctor catch that in the aftermath?
Yes, my thought is that on Homeworld, these dot concepts had already taken over and destroyed everything with the bugs, because you see in the beginning the dome over this place, and I think it started with Homeworld being destroyed, and then it's the slow integration of the bugs over the last week or so that I think they said coming into Finetime, which is I would assume like a moon or something off of a main homeworld or something like that.
I got the impression that the doctor showed up and found the homeworld in the state that we see it, and then was like, okay, started investigating, found this colony, and said, okay, let's save them before this spreads. Let's save them before it gets too late, kind of thing.
But yeah, I think the idea that the AI has learned and begun to hate them didn't start in Finetime. I feel like it started on the homeworld and then creeped through the rest of the system because of how terrible I mean, imagine if these are your children, the 17 to 27-year-olds, how bad Mummy had to be, and the rest of the adults who are the rich parents of these rich kids, sending them off for this.
The ones that raised these kids.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, knowing what we know at the end, is the AI the bad guy?
The AI is what's real. Those people are the bad ones.
Well, but what turned? It wasn't designed to take the kids out. There was a point in the episode where I thought that this was maybe about the midpoint of the episode. I'm like, oh no. The parents realized that the kids were so insufferable that they sent them off to this planet.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't last, but man, that would have been just as dark.
Yeah.
Sending you away is not enough. We need you to be gone forever.
I think that this is one of those...
The social experiment has failed.
I think this is one of those episodes that really doesn't have a villain or a bad guy. It is kind of social commentary. This is the situation. Some of it's terrible. Some of it could, nothing good is coming out of this, and everyone's at fault, but nobody's really malicious. I don't know.
Except Lindy at the end.
Well.
Because Ricky
and all the
September should have lived and she should have gone bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that I was wondering. I was like, if Ricky had survived, would he have taken up the doctor's offer? Would he have gone with him?
100%
Of
yes.
anybody there,
know.
I think he's the most likely, but we don't know for sure because he does seem to disconnect from the society a little more than everybody else. But also, if that's what he's been raised with, that's the beliefs that everybody around him has, maybe not. Maybe he's also going to go off into the wild with all the other Ubermensch.
See, I think that he was meant to portray the learned of the few who has... He turns off his dot every day and he reads books and he knows about everything else. And he even was caring enough towards Lindy to not tell her that the homeworld is destroyed when he had the opportunity. Even if something so small as that, which could have easily been just like, oh, they're not coming because X. It was just trying to shield her from that. So I think he would have listened, and he has compassion, which... when you are of the rest of them.
That was a very doctor thing to do. I could see the doctor doing that because Ricky just learned that his parents and all his family, everyone he loves on the homeworld is gone as well. And his first instinct is, let's protect Lindy. Let's not tell her what's going on, which I feel like is a very doctor thing to do. So I agree. If anyone were to take the doctor up on the offer, it would have been Ricky. But I don't know if just turning off your bubble and reading a book about, aquifers is enough to break, years of brainwashing.
But I think the point was that he was studied, he had read books, he'd done more than just that, and it had been
read the books that were still available in his society.
Yeah, but he tried to warn everyone and kept getting shut down.
Yeah.
He took additional extra steps multiple times to try to do more as much as he could.
Right. It had been made clear that on a couple of occasions he had come to these realizations. He may not have had everything sussed out. He was still asking the same questions that we had at the point where we met him, but he was aware of the problem and was trying to actively do something, kind of like Gothic Paul was just starting to come around to. But Paul obviously didn't have... Actually, I'm sorry, Gothic, because his surname was Paul. That he didn't have the resources or the capacity or the wherewithal to figure out that you had to get some information from beyond the literal bubble.
And I feel like with Gothic Paul, it was more I'm worried because I'm recognizing things going on, not actually taking action to solve the problem, just voicing his concern, where Ricky was actively trying to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the difference between the two, is you have one who lives in their bubble and starts to see that bubble shift and what that does to his mentality, versus somebody that doesn't live in the bubble, has read and studied and learned things and can see that there can be a solution and wants to pursue that. So let's go ahead and talk about the little bit at the end, because like I said, on the surface level, this looks like it's just social media bad. And then you get to the end and you realize the reason why Lindy treats the doctor the way she does, and that these are all just a bunch of horrible racists. And it's done in the last few minutes of the episode, and there's no resolution, there's no solution. There's some great stuff to take away from this, But if you're going to try and tackle an episode about racism, when you finally have a doctor who is a person of color, this feels a little... It was great, but I can't help but feel like there should have been more. And maybe this is just the first swing at it, and I hope so. But if this is all we get in regards to this, it feels a little flat.
I kind of think maybe more than being a commentary on racism, it was a thing for the audience to look at themselves and be like, who among you even picked up on this? Because it's been in front of you the whole time. There is nobody but white people anywhere. And did any of you see that? I feel like that was more of a message of this episode, of forcing you to think about that, of like, how oblivious are you to the world around you, to the people that you're seeing in your media, if you didn't pick up on that. Which, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm guilty of. I didn't pick up on it until they told me. And then I was like, oh, crap. Like, it was right there. And we all missed it because that's the media that we've been consuming for most of our lives.
And I don't know that it was solely specific to race, but also theology, belief system, where you come from and your background and upbringing as well. Because a lot of, I mean, they quote a religion and that you are other from us, but they also look at Ruby. And clearly the doctor is more set toward the front. But I think that it is the overall, anything that makes you different makes you not okay. And that it is part of the, and this is one of my things that I wondered, and it came through in Boom as well, but like the religious aspect of it taking over, and that your thoughts are only what you're allowed to think and only this, and you can't have any difference, any different way of communicating at all.
Systemic to the point where the dogma becomes the guiding practice. I don't know if this was an instance of not addressing it enough. I understand what you're saying, Jay, and I'm trying to think this through. I let credits roll at the end and immediately thought that this was something where, because of the fact that there was no clear resolution other than the begging and pleading that the doctor did to say, you think what you want, believe what you want. I'm not going to try to change that on you, but at least let me save you. And when that falls on deaf ears, that's kind of the extent of where the statement of the story, I felt, was going to leave off. And the rest was being handed over to the viewer and say, okay, you need to process, opine, and discuss. So, which is great for us as podcasters. The cases in the past where we've had these toes in the water of dealing with very, very real world, real moment issues that need to be given more attention, more conversation, more work put in. I don't know if this may have been intentional to just say, we're gonna put this under a very, very bright spotlight and step back, because we know that one, as wonderful as the doctor may be, one individual does not have the ability to even start to tear this apart. It takes as much of a collective process and desire to address and to work towards solutions than it did to create it in the first place. Hopefully not nearly as long, because but the point being that we don't have a single savior. And even if that were just a matter of the doctor just trying to spin to open the eyes of these 15, 20, 30, I don't know how many of these little were in the tunnel or whatever. Sorry. But the fact that the reaction was this, it goes from the laughter to the scream to the just barely holding composure. that in and of itself says even our wondrous title character can't crack this on their own. So here, viewer, work on this.
It definitely wasn't. I'm not trying to say that this wasn't a good way to go about it, because honestly, I watched it. I watched it the first time, and I wasn't able to get back to it for over 24 hours for a second viewing. And a lot of times, like, I will watch episodes multiple times because we talk about them and I want to get as much as I can from it. And sometimes it's very much, like, I want to watch that again. That was exciting. That was fun. That was, this was not that. This was not, I want to watch that again because I think but this sat on my brain for over 24 hours. Like, I kept thinking about it, and not in a fun way kind of thing. And I think that was the power of this episode, was not the excitement or the fun or the memorable lines or anything like that, but just the feeling that it left. And then, like I said, when I went back and watched it the second time, knowing everything that was, and picking up on the little things, I've never felt so gross rewatching an episode of Doctor Who. It was just so much ick. And but that is a powerful thing. The fact that it can elicit those kind of emotions.
I mean, I picked up on that going through the first time with so much of her victim complex. Every single thing that happened to her was, this is your fault. This is nothing to do with me. I did everything I needed to do. And even when her battery started to die, and she's like, you made me leave. They're literally saving your life because you were next in that room, and you're blaming them for your battery running out. And like, every step of the way, every single thing that she did was just too much. And I think, I mean, obviously we were looking at a society where that's the norm, but even the way that she was pitching her sales stuff and walking through and kind of like, I don't know if I should say this, but I look great. Like, that is just so internalized, and like, just you thinking that you are the best and are always the most. The numbers that they had on their little channel things, and you could tell the people who were a little bit more different to the others had lower numbers. And who knows how Ricky September got to where he was, but whatever he did, or whoever he was before, which we come to find out was not even his real person, all of that kind of speaks to that overall tone of everything within this episode, that just, even from the very start, obviously with it being a social media commentary, which we all struggle with day to day now, but looking at that from that perspective, it's just, it's a lot for sure. I wonder too if the doctor's reaction at the end, because we got so many tears this time, frustration and anger tears, I wonder if some of this will play forward in how he reacts or treats others in the future, or if he will be able to maintain his sense of evenness across the board for, like, give everyone a chance, even the next ones.
And I will say, did anybody actually watch Millie Gibson in the background during all of that? Because, like, don't get me wrong, Ncuti Gatwa was amazing. Like, award-winning performance there, because holy crap, he knows how to portray emotions better than anyone I can think of off the top of my head. Like, he makes you feel what he is feeling. But Millie Gibson in the background, just the shock and the frustration, and like, she looked like she was on the verge of tears and ready to vomit at one point. And it was, she didn't have a single line throughout the whole thing, but you could, again, same thing. You could feel what she was going through just by her simple motions.
Yeah, body language is huge.
That particular expression that she wore, or that you saw slowly unfold, because it is a gradual thing. It's something that starts to creep in as the depth of what is being put out there or being revealed, as the depth of it becomes more and more apparent. It goes from the surprise to why wouldn't you take this lifeline, to the disgust, to the sort of a tragic response, and then you see all of it combined, and she wears it all. And I wonder, again, this is just potshot crack theories, but because we've sung Gatwa's praises at doing exactly that, with sex education and other materials, that it's not something that she's not kind of taking notes on, perhaps? Not sure.
The interesting thing is that this scene is actually the first thing that Gatwa and Gibson filmed together.
Wow.
This was their first scene on screen together.
Wow,
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, which is why we got another technically Dr. Light episode immediately after, is because these are the two they were trying to do while Gatwa was finishing up sex education. So that did feel weird to me at first. I'm like, why are we getting another Dr. Light episode? But if we can get a Doctor-centric episode and then the next one, I think I'll be okay with it. The way that this is played out, I think it'll be okay. But that was when I found out that was the scene where the two of them first got, like, that shook me, because it felt like it felt like it was supposed to in the story, where they've been together through a lot of things together. And I was surprised that they were able to pull that off.
I'm going to throw this question back that we had last time around. We were talking about the placement of 73 yards in the overall sequence of stories. Do we think that this could have come before? That this episode, Dot and Bubble, could have come before 73 yards? And if so, would it have worked or not worked?
The only thing might be their commentary on, we've seen her before when Susan Twist shows up in this episode. Because 73 yards is the first time that Ruby points out, like, you look familiar. I think I've seen you before. And then in this one, it's like even more realization of, no,
True.
I've seen her somewhere else before too. And I think, but also she doesn't remember 73 yards, but just, I don't know. It seems like she has more recognition this time than she did in 73 yards.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's not going to be the thing that dictates the order of the episodes that we got. Because in 73 yards, yeah, it was just Ruby. The doctor wasn't there. And it was her kind of like, you look familiar. Neither of them ever looked at her in the Devil's Cord. So even though she was there, neither of them actually looked at her face. They both had their backs turned to her, or she turned away or whatever. So the ambulance was the first time they, quote unquote, saw her.
Well, they would have seen her on the screen in Space Babies as well, but that's not necessarily going to be memorable.
Turned away.
They also they ordered tea directly from her.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, is they had their back turned to her when they did. Like, she was turned around, they ordered, they turned around, and then she turned around and put the stuff on the counter. They never actually looked like face to face at her. It might have been like corner of the eye kind of thing, but they've been very careful to orchestrate that stuff.
Did you go back and watch it?
And so I'm wondering if that might not play it. Yes, multiple times.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
The Susan Twist
Yeah.
supercuts.
So it's good. Yeah.
So it might be that just because both the Doctor and Ruby recognized her, that it had to come after 73 yards. Depending on what happens in the next episode, like, maybe that could have, I don't know, but it's so far that's the only reason why I feel this one couldn't have come before 73 yards. But that might be a big enough reason depending on how this turns out.
Well, and if Ruby remembers her from that, then she's got some amount of memory of what happened in that alternate timeline.
Right, which we got at the end of 73 yards when she said she's been here 3 times and couldn't think of the third.
Yeah, but it seems like they're more shadow memories than real memories.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it does seem a little bit more substantial in this one, because she's like, no, I've seen her somewhere else. She can't put her finger on it, but she knows that, like, she's certain that she's seen her. Whereas in the last episode, she's like, I guess now is the third time. I'm like, it seemed very kind of.
So Jade, since you've, I guess, watched the Susan Twist supercut, is there a time before
created it?
Is currently editing it. Is there a time before the ambulance when they actually saw her?
The church on Ruby Road. She comes up to Ruby to request an old 1500s Christmas Carol.
Okay.
But that is the only time anyone would have seen her. And I don't know that Ruby would have clicked on that, because that was depending on time, anywhere from
she was on
like
stage
2
at the
weeks
time,
to,
wasn't she? Or
yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to see.
That was also back near Christmas, which was either 2 weeks ago or 6 months. I'm not sure. It depends on so that's the only time that either of them have looked her face to face.
Right. Until the ambulance. And even then, if you're in these situations of duress, you don't necessarily... I'm surprised that they even clocked it because, like, who's really looking closely at that thing as all of those horrors were happening on that planet's surface?
Except they showed her so many times.
True. I just think that it's a morbid curiosity, but this was actually a big nothing burger, and it's just there because it's the play on words at the fact that there's a twist at the end, and it means absolutely nothing because she's been doing a lot of stuff prior to this. She's been involved in Doctor Who for quite a while prior to this season. It's just now that it's started to be called out. Maybe it's just because Russell thinks that it's just too clever of a pun and he's just got to use it. But it's got us.
Well, yeah, it's got us talking about it for sure. If they weren't calling it out in the course of the episodes, I would absolutely say that that's what he's doing. Like, I would totally be on board with that theory. But the fact that they're starting to call it out in the story means that there's it's Chekhov's gun. They have to address it at some point.
Because she's clearly following them, or at least being placed into the same places where they are.
That's the other thing. So there's been no wink from any of Twist's characters yet. No presence, no dare say master kind of reaction of, it's the master in disguise, but they keep every once in a while when the main character moves away, there's a little mustache twirl or nothing. There's nothing. She's as surprised as they are to meet every time they meet, allegedly.
She's also
this time she wasn't even meeting them.
Right. She's
on the screen already dead.
Clearly a recording. Yeah, it was very clearly a recording, and at the end of it, the doctor was like, "Okay, we'll save that," and you see him like use the sonic. So supposedly he's saved that recording.
It's been double parked.
She's also. It's not like she's ever somebody new to the world environment that she's in. As far as we can tell, she's got a history there. Like, she's the mommy here in the ambulance. She's always been the face on the ambulance.
Right.
So it's not like she's just somebody that's popping in at the same time that the doctor's popping in. She's more established than that.
I think even when she's serving them tea, she knows who, like, she speaks with some of the other people. So it's not like pop up behind the counter, serve tea, go run away. Like, she has a place to be there.
She's not there specifically for the Doctor and Ruby or a figment of their imagination or a psychic projection. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, definitely big topics in this episode. And I think tackling it with a show like this, do we feel like we've already pointed out or lost the people who will be offended by this being a subject of the episode? Or are we still going to see, or are we seeing people who aren't willing to face it and kind of look at it and like we are kind of saying, like, maybe we didn't realize it the first go around all the way fully, or however?
I think anyone that's going to be offended and leave did that long ago.
But there are people that are still
sticking around. The people that are sticking around are still going to complain about it and talk about how it's absolutely ruining the show, but they're watching every week to get fuel for their rants.
Mm-hmm. You can only hashtag RIP Doctor Who for so long before your necromancy skills just suck. The only people that I had seen that were really flat out, didn't like it, were either people over the age of 75 who didn't get it because it was a lot of social media discussion and that just eluded them. So they were just thrown by the whole episode. It was far too science fiction, but it wasn't really science fiction at all. It was very science present. Or it was individuals who were upset at the unexpected reveal at the end that felt like it was tacked on and that it wasn't necessary to the story. To which my response, and I wasn't really going to stay out of the comments on it, was that it wasn't tacked on. It was a reveal. It was there to say things are awful. Oh, look, we're awful. And
Right.
it's something that Doctor Who has done many, many times when it pulls the curtain back and says, hi, it's us. We're the problem. It's us.
And that's if you go back and rewatch it, it's very obvious that it was not tacked on. It was part of the story from the get-go. It just wasn't right out there in front, so that it was easy to miss it at first. But it was 100% in the DNA of this story.
Yeah, and until you really focus on it and realize why versus just like they're terrible people. Like it has a purpose, it has that undertone of all of that. When you're used to when you're used to that just being your normal life, then you don't see it that way.
So once again, we can say to the individuals who claim that this is just a social justice agenda and that all they're doing at this point is just trying to make things uncomfortable for viewers or try to take jabs at portions of society. Yes. Yeah.
You're right.
If you, as I even read somebody saying, I was really enjoying this because everyone was making the Black Mirror comparisons and I love that kind of stuff. So, and I really enjoyed it as a Black Mirror episode until they jammed this thing on the end of it. You have literally just said a Black Mirror, the premise of it, the Black Mirror is there to show us our dark reflections. It's in the name. So if that is something that you claim that you enjoy and that sort of storytelling, you're obviously not getting out of it what it's supposed to be handing you.
So many people watch those episodes and they get defensive about it. And they're like, well, that's not me. I don't do that. That's everyone else around, or it's easier to point fingers than to own it. And I think the last episode, or not last episode, well, I guess actually the last few, it's all been that way kind of. But like we were saying, another one that sort of felt that way too is it's very easy to say, well, I would never do that. Clearly, that wouldn't be me. But like you're saying, Kira, it's meant to shine that light and help you to think through it and be a better person the next time when that comes up, so you don't keep doing it. But I think people watch Black Mirror for the shock factor, and then they go on their merry way, not realizing that is them.
Mm-hmm. So those were, as I was saying, those are the two camps of any individuals who claimed that this episode didn't work or that it was their least favorite or what have you. They were either ones that didn't understand the sci-fi premise of it because the technology eluded them, or they didn't like what they saw because it made them feel things that they didn't want to feel, and they pushed back from it.
I mean, I think that I'm interested to see what social group Doctor Who goes to offend next time, because it's been exciting the whole time. Like I'm enjoying seeing where this season is going, because I haven't been able to guess it once.
Well, it's a Regency episode, so they're clearly going after cosplayers.
Clearly, yes.
Or romance novel lovers.
Oh yeah, they're going after Austenites. No Jane Austenites out there.
Yeah.
You're all doomed.
I mean, this one I honestly thought we were just going to be dealing with bugs, but that was not right. The bugs were so secondary to the entire thing.
Tertiary at best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fourth.
Fourth-iary.
I would still say, I'm walking away from this conversation saying that I still feel that this was my favorite of the season. I think performances were exceptional. I think if Ncuti isn't up for a BAFTA award based on this episode alone, then I think they're not necessarily paying attention. Gibson was outstanding. We had supporting characters that I can't stand wallowing too long in shows where there are these insufferable characters, especially ones where the entire cast is made up of just horrible people. I know some people love watching those slow train wreck kind of shows, but that's just not, I can't, I need somebody with some redemptive capabilities in there somewhere. But this amount of it, as far as just sort of seeing all of these little Finetime vapid kids in their world. I had some folks wondering why didn't something happen to them when the boat went out under the river, like some giant set of claws didn't come down and just snatch the boat out of the water and give you that final aha thing. That's why the force field was there.
Because the doctor wouldn't have actually let them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're going to have to go deal with their choices because of who they are.
As they all slowly starve in the wild because they have no actual survival skills.
They couldn't walk in less than an hour ago.
I will say because we've given attention to Gotwa Gibson for tremendous performances, we cannot overlook Callie Cook, who played Lindy. It takes skill to play a character so unlikable, but you still desire to follow. Like, there was no point in this story that I felt like I don't want to be seeing what she's doing. There were plenty of times where I'm like, I've had enough of this girl. I don't want to have to put up with her anymore. But she managed to keep me engaged. And that is a hard thing to do, especially with a character that is so unlikable.
Mm.
Yeah.
It did help when she would take a streetlight to the face once in a while.
That is true.
That was good. So funny. Of all the moments of like the Gallivant moment of, hey, they trained so hard the next day they shouldn't be able to move, and then it happens. That moment of her hitting the light pole and then doing it again is that. Where it's like she couldn't walk. And I know that they can't have her stymied the entire episode because you can't move anywhere. But having those moments, yeah, I need that. Small punishments.
Well, this episode, like so many this season, as we've said, makes no attempt to shy away from the messages, the themes, or the commentaries that Davies and Bad Wolf are handing audiences to observe and discuss. And as podcasters, hey, this is a candy store for us because it means that we get to have these discussions with one another, but we also get to have them with you. So whether it's social media, hey... social media, feedback by way of email, or even voicemails, as you can call into country code +1 754 call GPR or 754-225-5477. You can let us know what you're thinking and what you're feeling about how these topics are being addressed throughout the season, and we'll include them in the GPR conversation as we progress. So thanks.
This has been episode 523 of Gallifrey Public Radio. Until next time, this is Jay saying, please, for your own sake and for those of everyone around you, bubble down.
And this is Keir saying, all this podcasting, it chaps my hands. Like I get really bad hand chapping.
This is Julie saying, I'm so disappointed that even after year 5-5, we still have battery problems.
And this is Haley saying, Forthiary is getting added to my dictionary. Near Mavity.
Yes.
We'll see you next time.
I'm a Z.
Tag, you're it.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Gallifrey Public Radio. As a fan-run podcast, your thoughts and opinions are part of the conversation. Leave us a comment or review on your preferred podcast app, find us on social media to message us, or visit GallifreyPublicRadio.com for email and voicemail contacts. We'll see you out there in time and space.
Hi, this is Jacob. This recording of Gallifrey Public Radio is copyrighted in 2024. GPR is a fan-owned, fan-produced podcast. We'll see you next time!